Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. I guess I'm like the South Carolina version of the McRib, back by popular demand, but only while supplies last for a limited time. So I'm actually kind of surprised that Steve asked me to join this teleconference this week because, to be truthful, I thought we had a really good day against Georgia on special teams. And then the last 2 weeks against obviously weaker opponents, I didn't think we quite played to our potential from start to finish. We had some good moments in those games, and we made some things happen. But we also left a lot of yards on the field. I've talked to you guys in here before about hidden yards in games, the things that maybe don't always show up in the stat sheet, but when we look at the video on Sunday morning, you see it. And beyond that, it's still, from my perspective, very much a work in progress to get these guys to play with the kind of technique and relentless effort that I expect. I don't coach them any different regardless of the opponent, don't prepare any different. I'm no different in our meetings. I'm no less intense on the field during those special teams periods. And so I try to set the example for the standard that we expect, and we're still striving to get there relative to not worrying about the score and the time in the game and the situation, and just going out and playing and putting the technique on film. So I'd much rather turn on the film and feel satisfied that I'm seeing those things show up consistently than come up with a couple smoke and mirrors type gadget plays and those things, which I realize are important, and it's a chance to make a difference on special teams, but it's only part of the whole package as far as I'm concerned. So we need to keep pushing and striving to get there. But speaking of the gadgets, I was actually asked by one of our donors earlier this week about the value of the muddle huddle and why you would run something like that. We ran it the last 2 weeks, obviously. We ran it in this last game against South Carolina State. And I think just a short story probably best explains the value of it. A few years ago when I was coaching at Memphis, we had run a few muddle huddles early in the season and had some success with it. A couple times we just checked out of it and kicked the PAT. And we were on a trip mid-season to Louisiana Monroe, and we were doing our Friday walkthrough at their stadium. And we just happened to stumble across a piece of trash. And that piece of trash happened to be their defensive practice face for Wednesday. And they had allotted 10 minutes to defending muddle huddle. And I remember after the GA handed it to me, I looked at it, and then I found Mike Norvell, and I said to Mike, this is already a victory. Because anybody who's done this knows that you have a very finite amount of time to prepare each week, and you have to be very conscientious and thoughtful about where you allocate those practice minutes to. So as far as I was concerned, that was 10 minutes that their defense was not spending on short yardage or goal line or third downs or whatever other situations that they could have, and obviously that indirectly helped our offense. Now, I'll also admit that my grandfather worked for the sanitation department, so maybe I just have that gene to look for that stuff when you make a trip like that. But it has been good for us. It has been good for us, and it's something that we'll continue to do. And it's kind of like a commando raid. You're in, you're out. You hope it's successful. You hope it makes a difference. You're making people prepare for it, and then it might disappear into the night, and you may not see it for a few weeks. So I think we're achieving what we want to out of that, and the kids take a lot of pride in executing it. They get excited about it when we have one of those in the package. So was talking about some of the hidden yards and some of the yards maybe we left behind the last couple of weeks. We had the punt return for a touchdown against Charlotte that got called back because of a penalty. And then last week on one of the block punts, we tried to pick it up, and it ended up being a muff that the opponent recovered. So we like to be aggressive. I think we're making some progress on our punt pressure in terms of blocking punts and getting some good returns so far this year. But we can't make those kind of mistakes. We can't leave those yards out on the field against SEC opponents beginning this week. So there's a real sense of urgency from my standpoint, and hopefully the players are feeling that we need to tighten up things and really be ready to put our best foot forward beginning this Saturday night.
Hey, Coach.
Hi.
What have you seen from Kentucky special teams? They had kind of a mixed bag against Ole Miss. The kicking was not great, but then you have Barry and Brown on the punt returns. What have you seen from him and from that kicking side of things on tape?
Yeah, so first of all, we've talked in here a lot before about special teams and how it reflects your program and the culture of your program. And I think the world of Kentucky's program and what they've built there, the consistency, the continuity, the success that they've had, and they do a great job recruiting and evaluating players, developing the players that they have. So I do think special teams is a priority there, and I do think they've been very consistent on special teams through the years. Now, every year is a little bit different. This happens to be a year where they are incredibly explosive with their return units. And you mentioned Barry and Brown. I've already got a nickname for him, the Red Barrian. I mean, he's the guy that everybody in America is going to be weary of here if they're not already. And it's impressive watching him, just the speed, the vision. He's got a great feel for their scheme, and they're putting him in position to be successful. And their punt returner is a very dynamic guy as well, and a starter. They play a lot of starters on their special teams, and again, that's a reflection of the program that those guys are committed to it. When you say the mixed bag, you're probably alluding to some of the issues that they've had with their field goal operation and their punt operation, and it happens. I'm sure they're putting a ton of time into it. I'm sure they're just like we would or anybody else trying to fix some of those things. But obviously those things have occurred to them early in the season. So it really is a tale of two cities for them. But overall, I would say their personnel is very good. You can tell they're putting the time into it. They're very sound in their approach. And, we have to find a way, figure out a way to earn a way to create an edge for ourselves in this phase of the game, to have a chance to go up there and win it on Saturday night.
That was a very casual mention of your grandfather being in sanitation.
Yeah, so my dad was a police officer, a couple other police officers in the family, and one grandfather after World War II worked in sanitation. The other, he worked in the Brooklyn Navy Yard building ships, and then opened up a little neighborhood butcher shop. So Staten Island family, and my parents moved down to North Carolina when I moved to Elon in 2006. But you never forget where you came from.
I hear that as a I guess code on TV for other things.
Oh, meaning like some of my other friends on Staten Island?
Perhaps.
Is that what you're alluding to? Yeah, so, you kind of knew, Staten Island is famous for having a lot of cops, firemen, and then made guys. And so, you growing up there, you just sort of knew that, so-and-so's family just had some kind of other business, but it was just a peaceful coexistence.
Yeah.
And we had a very safe neighborhood for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. To more pressing items, the hidden yard stuff, can you expound on that and how you guys track that specifically, and does that correlate to success when you guys are in an area that you term or deem as good and
Sure.
successful?
Yeah, it's sort of I call it a formula, but you guys know I'm no accountant, so it's not. If I was really a finance guy, I'd probably be working in Manhattan right now and pulling what's left of my hair out because of the stock market. But for me, it's more just things that are important and assigning some values to those. So if we return a kickoff past the 25-yard line, let's say we get it to the 31, that would be +6 in hidden yards, because if it was a touchback or a fair catch, we would have got it at the 25. If we down a kickoff at the 19-yard line, it's +6. When you start getting into some of the turnovers and those kind of things, we add a lot of value to that because of the importance of it and how it can change the game. Penalties are a huge thing, because you get a return, a 20-yard return, and there's a holding penalty. The net is -30 because of the hold, or where the hold occurred on a kickoff return. It could be worse than that. So we want the guys to be very aware of making good decisions and how those impact the game. So we block a punt the other night. That ball, if it was just down by the opponent, that might have been a net punt for them of 28 yards. But all of a sudden, we muff it, and now, that might be -68 for us, or something that we feel like is relevant to assign it, so that it jumps out that, like, hey, this was a good aggressive play, but it didn't work out, and we gave them a possession, and we gave them the ball back near midfield. So those are things that are going to hurt us in terms of a chance to win the game.
Pete, I wanted to ask about that muffed punt. Obviously, Josh drops it a little bit, but if you look, the wide open grass in front of him. How do you coach that when you're looking at film and what you say to him?
Yeah, so when he came off the field, honestly, I didn't say a word to him because I was just still trying to process and digest it. I never want our guys to get too conservative. One of the reasons why I think we've had some success on special teams is being aggressive and making full speed decisions. And, that was a very rare situation, but it was an opportunity to create a huge play. And so I don't fault Josh for that. Obviously, I would have liked to have seen him bend a little bit more, maybe slow down a little bit, make sure he had secured it first before he tried to advance it. So I think there's definitely something to be learned there, but I also don't want to handcuff our guys to a point where they're getting so conservative that maybe we're leaving big opportunities out on the field as well. That was something you don't see every day, clearly.
Pete, Shane has said that there's maybe a library of 2-point plays that you guys can run. Just ballpark figure, how many plays are in that library? And your granddad in sanitation, was his name Barone?
No, but we're familiar with them. We're very familiar. There is a library for sure that we've accumulated through the years, and there's a few guys out there that, in the off season that I'll talk to. Jeff Munkin up at Army is a dear friend, and his daughter's actually a freshman here. His wife was down for Parents Weekend a couple weeks ago and was hanging out with Jen. But Jeff and I go way back, and he's another guy that likes to run Muddle Huddle. So he and I will often talk during the season or the off season about some ideas. We have access to a lot of video, so I'm always looking at that stuff in the off season and getting ideas. And sometimes it just happens very organically, and it's something that you want to add and incorporate and best utilize our personnel. So fortunately, we have some good athletes on that field goal unit. Tonka obviously showed his athleticism, and some other guys have showed their athleticism before. So it's again, you're just looking for little creative ways to get an edge and to continue to be aggressive in your approach.
Hey, Pete, hope you're doing well.
I am, thanks.
we've seen you guys twice now. You've had the ball in plus territory off a kickoff from a penalty, and onside kicked it twice with two different looks. Is that something where you go to Shan and say, hey, we have a look here, we can try this with the field position? Or is that Shan going to you and saying, we want to onside kick this, what's your best look?
Yeah, so from a field position standpoint, when you are at the 50 or we were at the plus 45 the other night, trying that onside kick right there, there's very little to lose, right? Because if you kicked a touchback, they get the ball at the 25-yard line. We tried an onside kick. We didn't get it. We didn't execute well. However, we only lost 10 or 11 yards of field position when it was all said and done. So, if you talk to some of the analytics guys out there and so forth, I think they would highly support being aggressive in that situation. So again, not to tell you everything that we're doing and what we're thinking and whatnot, but I thought that was a very sound decision the other night, and I wish we would have executed it better.
Pete, do you have defensive guys like lining up at your door now to run 2-point plays or anything like that?
I'll tell you what, if you could give me a team full of Tonka Hemingways, we would be just fine, because that's a guy who approaches his game the right way. He's about as good of a guy and as hard of a worker and as thorough of a preparer as I've been around. And so, nothing is handed out. Everything is earned. I'm not back there negotiating with guys by any means, but when you do get an opportunity to put somebody like Tonka in that position, you do keep your fingers crossed that it'll work out and be successful, because you know that this is the kind of guy that you could certainly build your program around in terms of how he handles himself on and off the field and the kind of work ethic that he has. He's just a fabulous human being.
And then on Josh, I know you talked about him in the punt game. I guess if you don't wash out his punt return at Charlotte, his punt return average is way, way up from last year. I guess
it is.
I'm sure there's some of that has to do with blocking and things opening up. But what are you seeing from him, at least in that game, that side of things, and how is that maybe helping you guys in the field position game as well?
Yeah, so we talked after last season quite a bit with him about some situations where I felt like he was a little too conservative, fair catching some balls where he had time and space and trusting himself to maybe make the first guy miss. And maybe there was a 8, 9, 10-yard gain to be made if he didn't fair catch a ball. Now, that doesn't mean to be reckless either. So, number one, it's good to see him being a little bit more aggressive this year. But I will tell you this, coming out of last season, if you really crunch the numbers and watch the video on us, punt pressure, punt return, even though we blocked a lot of punts, our return game left a lot to be desired. And so as far back as the spring, when it came to allocating time for drill work, we have put more time into punt return. And so I think you're starting to see gradually, slowly but surely, you're starting to see a little bit more of that technique show up. Now, it has to be more consistent. The effort has to be more consistent. The strain has to be better. It's the longest play in football on a punt return. So we have to keep demanding the right things. But I do think you have seen some notable improvements there so far, which, again, going back into conference play is important.
Hey, Pete, this is kind of a complicated question that I think has a pretty simple answer. But the difference between Barnett going from 93 to 76 is the jersey number has to do with where he lines up on the line, not necessarily the fact that he's on a special team.
Nick Barrett, yes,
Nick
sir.
Barrett.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
Nick Barrett.
I just wanted to.
And then,
yep.
And then my question off of that is, if you fake a punt, get a first down, try to go hurry up, try to run a first down play, do you have to have 5 guys with offensive line numbers in the punt team in order to run that play?
Right. Well, to answer your first question, we have to have 5 guys on the field between 50 and 79. So if it's a situation where more defensive guys might be playing on the field goal unit that week, we'll make sure that one of those guys is in an appropriately numbered jersey. So that's the simple answer on PAT field goal. And then, the fake punt stuff, as far as I know with the rules, if you don't change personnel, you can leave those guys out on the field, right? It's the same group. But I don't claim to be an expert. We might need to get Mr. McCade from the SEC in here to answer your any more detailed questions than that. I'll defer to somebody a lot smarter than me.
You've mentioned before just how impressed you've been with this freshman class. Just through 5 games, what's stood out to you about those guys, and how would you evaluate their performance?
Well, there's definitely some good players, and you're seeing a lot of them play meaningful snaps, particularly on defense. I think the biggest challenge for those guys right now is that a month and a half ago, they would have been thankful and grateful to get on 2 or 3 special teams units, and now some of them are playing 50, 60 plays on defense. And they're still 18-year-old guys, and this is really big for them right now. So now part of maturing is being able to balance, okay, I'm playing safety or I'm playing nickel, or maybe I'm getting some reps as an edge rusher. And this goes for some of our second-year and third-year players too. But now I also have to balance being on the depth on 2 or 3 special teams units, and everything's important. My job on punt return is just as important as my job at nickel. My job on kickoff is just as important as my job at safety. And that's challenging for a young guy who's under a lot of demands when it comes to getting our whole defense lined up perhaps as a safety. So those are ongoing conversations and challenges, but that's where we're at. We need those guys to be multitasking right now. Now, the good news is we keep getting good reports from our academic advising staff that these guys are doing a nice job on campus, so that's encouraging. It's nice when you're not worried about a guy taking care of his academic business, and you feel like, okay, he can spend a little bit more time making sure he's all up to speed with his responsibilities. But I would say that's the biggest challenge right now, is that so many of those guys have had changing job descriptions here in recent weeks that they've got to manage more. And I had a conversation with one of them the other day, and I said, hey, it'd be great if we were sitting here talking about what you need to do to get on a special team, and then 2 years from now, what you need to do to become a starter on defense, and now you're a well-trained special teams guy who can continue to contribute on a couple units and be a backup on a couple others. But that's just not the circumstances right now. So we need you to be mature beyond your years and handle this and manage this, and you need to be trustworthy. So the good news is there's some good guys in that group. There's some intelligent guys in that group, and they want to do right, but it's still a lot to ask. Okay, thanks, guys.